can earn everyone's approval and still lose yourself. I don't think there is a sentence that has haunted me more, because for much of my life I believed the opposite, that if enough people approved of me, then I would finally belong. I lived as though belonging could be bought with applause, that worth could be secured by nods, handshakes, smiles of recognition. And I confess there were seasons where I was drenched in that applause, surrounded by affirmation, congratulated for being the man I appeared to be. But in the quiet, away from the lights and the noise, I knew the truth. They weren't clapping for me. They were clapping for the mask I had learned to wear. That's the cruel irony of approval. It feels like connection in the moment, but it leaves you emptier afterward. Because when people approve of the mask, they never really see the face, they never really know you. And so even in the crowd, you are exiled. Even when you are loved, you are lonely. I remember moments as a boy where this first took root. Standing in a classroom, hands tucked behind my back, laughter swelling around me at a joke I didn't find funny. I laughed too, the sound catching in my throat, thin and brittle, because I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't. The knot in my stomach told me I was betraying something, but the nod of approval from the other boys told me I was safe. That moment trained me. It taught me that safety was purchased by self-betrayal, that to belong, I had to erase myself. The lesson followed me into adulthood. I mirrored voices in boardrooms, softened my convictions in conversations, bit my tongue at dinner tables. I said yes when I longed to say no. I smiled when I wanted to cry. I laughed when I wanted to leave. And slowly, over years, the mask tightened until I wasn't sure where it ended and where I began. I have stood in rooms filled with warm laughter, handshakes, words of affirmation, and felt more alone than I ever did in solitude, because none of them were approving me. They were approving the performance. And so the question presses harder each year. What if fitting in costs your life? The road outside the windshield stretches into a fork, 2 lanes peeling away into different horizons. One is wide, well-traveled, lined with the cars of those who have chosen applause over truth. The other is narrow, lonely at first, but open to the wind and sky. I know both roads. I've walked the crowded one too long, and I've paid the price. My own absence. Approval costs truth. And the deeper sting is this. Once you sell truth often enough, you forget its taste. The lie is subtle. It whispers to us in childhood, reinforced in school, magnified in work, etched into family and culture. If they approve of you, you belong. It starts with gold stars on charts, grades circled in red, parents saying, "We're proud of you." When you meet the script, it deepens in adolescence. Don't dress like that, don't speak like that, don't stand apart. Blend in, fit in. Approval becomes the currency of safety. I absorbed that lesson so thoroughly that by the time I was an adult, it was instinct. Walk into a room, scan the crowd, adjust accordingly. If they are loud, become louder. If they are critical, become cautious. If they are cruel, laugh along. And every time I adjusted, the knot in my stomach tightened, but the nods of approval soothed it briefly. The applause dulled the ache momentarily. Then it faded, and I needed more. Approval is a shallow well. You drink from it and feel quenched, but the thirst returns stronger. And so you keep going back until you are dependent, desperate for the next sip of validation. The cost? Yourself. I've been there. I've been the man who was praised for his adaptability, when in truth, it was just performance. I've been the friend who went along with the joke that cut too deep, because silence felt like exile. I've been the father who kept his real opinions quiet at gatherings because rocking the boat risked disapproval, and every time a small piece of me disappeared. Contradiction is sharp. Approval feels like safety, but it delivers loneliness. Belonging feels costly because it demands truth, but it is the only home we have. You can earn everyone's applause and still die unseen. I recall once sitting at a table, laughter rolling around me. My mouth stretched into a smile, but my chest felt hollow. I was surrounded yet starved. The approval filled the air like perfume, pleasant for a moment but fading quickly, leaving nothing to hold. And I realized with horror, if I vanished from that room, they wouldn't even notice. They never knew me to begin with, they only knew the mask. The crowd is untruth. I hear that sentence echo through me. A crowd does not know you, a crowd cannot hold you. A crowd can only mirror what it expects you to be. And if you dissolve yourself into it, you will vanish. Approval costs truth, and belonging begins only when you refuse to pay that price. The crooked tree returns to my mind. Alone in a field, it doesn't fit the line of the others, doesn't bow to symmetry. Its trunk twists, its branches stretch oddly, but it stands alive, unashamed. It belongs not because it matches, but because it is true. That is what I long to be. That is what I suspect you long to be. Not admired for the mask, but loved for the truth. Not applauded for the performance, but held for the presence. And so my confession is this. I wore the mask so long that when I finally tried to take it off, I was afraid there was nothing underneath. Approval had cost me so much truth that I wasn't sure who I was anymore. And the applause, once intoxicating, turned bitter in my mouth. There was an evening that crystallized the whole contradiction of my life. I was at a dinner party, one of those gatherings where the wine flowed, the jokes grew sharper as the night went on, and the currency of belonging was quick wit and loud laughter. At one point, someone told a story, cruel at its core, dressed up as humor. The table erupted in laughter, every head turned, every voice joined in, and there I was, stomach knotting, a heavy silence rising in my throat. I knew the story cut against everything I believed in, everything I wanted to stand for. And yet, almost without thinking, my mouth opened and I laughed too. It wasn't real laughter, it was thin, forced, a sound that betrayed me the moment it left my lips. Inside I felt hollow, outside I looked like I belonged. Approval won, truth lost, and the bitter taste of that moment has never left me. It wasn't the first time, nor the last. I had been practicing the art of erasure for years. In school, I mimicked the tone of the boys I feared most, thinking it would shield me from their ridicule. In university, I adopted the opinions of professors I disagreed with, terrified of being the outlier. In my career, I performed competence long after I was burning out, afraid that asking for help would cost me respect. And in friendships, I softened my convictions, laughed at cruelty, stayed quiet when silence was betrayal, all for the fragile currency of approval. But the real cost came later, when I realized I had lost track of who I actually was. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror one morning, staring at my reflection and whispering aloud, "Who are you?" I expected an answer. What came instead was silence. Years of performing had blurred the lines so badly that I wasn't sure what was left when the performance ended. It is a terrifying thing to realize that you have lived years without really being present to yourself. That the people who claimed to love you may not love you at all. They love the version of you that bends, softens, performs. And the ache that follows is loneliness of the deepest kind, because if no one truly knows you, then even their love cannot reach you. That dinner party remains my emblem. I see myself sitting there, the room shaking with laughter, my own mouth stretched into a smile I didn't mean, and in that moment I was lonelier in the crowd than I had ever been in solitude. Approval had given me company, but it had stolen myself. That moment taught me something I wish I had known years earlier. Approval is applause, but belonging is home. The two are not the same. Approval is shallow. It is earned by performance, given by crowds, and vanishes as quickly as it comes. You can live your entire life chasing it, bending yourself into shapes you were never meant to take, and in the end, you will find nothing solid beneath your feet. It promises belonging, but delivers exile. Belonging, on the other hand, is rooted in truth. It does not require performance. It is costly because it demands honesty. It asks you to stand crooked if you are crooked, to speak even if your voice shakes, to walk alone if the crowd demands your silence. And in that honesty, you may lose approval, but you gain yourself. The contradiction is sharp. The more you seek approval, the lonelier you become. The more you risk disapproval, the more you find belonging. I have learned this slowly, painfully. I've had to untangle the lie that fitting in equals love. Fitting in is exile because when you erase yourself to earn acceptance, you are already cast out from the only place that matters, your own life. I think often of that crooked tree I mentioned earlier. It doesn't bend itself to fit the line of the others. It twists, it leans, it grows at its own angle. At first glance, it looks misshapen, vulnerable, even weak. But when the storms come, it is the crooked tree that survives, because its roots are deep, because it has grown according to truth, not conformity. The forest of straight, identical trees may look impressive, but they are shallow, fragile, and fall together. The crooked tree, authentic to itself, endures. The same is true of us. Conformity may look strong, but it is fragile. Authenticity may look vulnerable, but it is the only strength that endures. And so I find myself repeating to my own heart again and again, approval costs truth. The crowd is untruth. Better to walk alone with integrity than to stand surrounded in falsehood. Better to risk disapproval and keep your soul than to win applause and lose yourself. This is the philosophical turn, the detour I needed to take. I used to think disapproval would kill me, that rejection would erase me. But I see now the opposite is true. It was approval that was erasing me. It was belonging, costly, fragile, rooted in truth, that was saving me. The road splits, and I know now which one I want to take. Not the wide one of applause, but the narrow one of truth. Because at the end of that road, even if I walk it alone, at least I will be home. I look back now and see the pattern clearly. Every time I chose approval, I lost a little more of myself. Every time I stayed silent for the sake of fitting in, a part of me disappeared. Every time I forced laughter to be accepted, my own voice weakened, and every time I wore the mask, the face underneath grew harder to recognize. But there were also moments, rare, fragile, trembling, when I chose differently. Moments when I told the truth, even though it cost me. Moments when I said no, even though I knew it would disappoint. Moments when I stood apart, uncomfortable, exposed, but honest. And in those moments, something inside me stirred awake. A relief, a breath, a quiet strength that whispered, "This is who you are." Those moments showed me what belonging really means. Belonging is not applause. Belonging is the quiet peace that comes when your outer life finally matches your inner truth. It is costly, yes. It may mean standing alone in the short term, but it is the only road that leads to home. So I want to ask you, where have you been trading truth for applause? Where have you worn the mask so long that you're afraid to take it off? Where have you mistaken the safety of approval for the shelter of belonging? I ask because I know how easy it is to confuse the two. Approval feels warm, but it fades like smoke. Belonging feels risky, but it endures like stone. And the only way to reach it is through honesty, through the trembling courage of being who you are, even if the crowd disapproves. The road is always splitting before us. One path is smooth, lined with applause, promising safety but offering only emptiness. The other is rougher, lonelier at first, but true. Which road will you choose? Approval costs truth. That is the ache I carry and the clarity I have finally found. You can be loved for a mask and die unseen. You can win applause and lose yourself. You can belong to the crowd and yet be exiled from your own life. But there is another way, the road of authenticity. The road that does not promise applause but offers peace. The road where you may walk alone at first but never in exile, because you are finally walking with yourself. Choose the road that is yours, not theirs. Choose the crooked tree over the straight line, the voice that trembles with truth over the silence that wins approval. Choose the risk of disapproval over the certainty of self-betrayal. Choose the home of belonging over the prison of applause. And may you discover, as I have begun to, that the relief of authenticity is greater than the ache of disapproval. That the courage to be true is stronger than the fear of being rejected. That in the end, belonging requires only one thing, that you do not abandon yourself. So walk the narrow road. Let the crowd's applause fade into silence. Let the mask slip. Let the air clear. And stand as you are, crooked, imperfect, vulnerable, but real. Because in the end, authenticity is the only approval that matters. Choose your own road, and may it lead you home.